All right, 6 o'clock, call the meeting to order. All members are present with the exception of Rick. We'll proceed. Additions to the agenda.
There were 2 additions to the agenda today. They were just coaching contracts that were signed, so they came in after the agenda had been sent last week.
Right, looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Cheryl, seconded by Ron. All right, move on to public comment.
That's just
What?
the vote.
Oh,
Okay.
on vote, sorry.
No, it's good.
You're good.
You're good. Yep.
So all
All in
in favor.
favor, sorry.
Yep. Aye.
Aye. I'm new to
You're fine.
this.
You're fine.
You're good.
Yep.
You're good.
All right. Now we can move up to public comment.
Yep.
And what you guys up?
Okay. You can take the spot right at the front.
Okay. right.
While they're walking up, I'll read some guidelines and standards that we kind of go by. A reminder, the remarks should be addressed to the board as a whole. Even when communicating difficult issues, it's important to remain respectful and dignified in your communication. A 5-minute time limit is established for each participant. In the event multiple people wish to address the board on the same topic, the board will ask the group to identify one person that will speak on behalf of all participants. In general, the board will not respond to the information received during public comment. In order to communicate in an effective manner, please keep public communication to 2 or 3 main points and articulate those points as directly and clearly as possible. Lastly, the superintendent will follow up with all participants of public comment. Jen, I'll ask that you start the timer.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. We are here, my wife and I are here this evening to talk a little bit about the bus transportation issues that have been arising to us. Our daughters especially are reviewing or receiving longer bus rides in the afternoon. It's been brought to my attention that a lot of this, the reasoning for the longer bus rides is for some of the out of district students that are being offered the transportation, allowing our girls to be on the bus for up to an hour and a half in the afternoon on their way home. They are both, I don't want to say it, they both come home or go to school each day with anxiety, and you know, they don't look forward to going to school every day because they are not looking forward to the bus ride home. The bus ride in is fine, but the bus ride home they're struggling with. And one of our biggest concerns with that is that they are old enough now to deal with it a little better, but we have 2 young boys coming up. That's going to be an adjustment for them. 2 little guys, kindergarten full days. So a hour and a half bus ride should be reviewed, I believe. The out of district students we have discussed with all of the local neighboring school districts on how they're operating and compared to how Paynesville operates and such. And which is why we're here tonight, because we'd like to hopefully bring this to your attention if you guys aren't aware of it, and hopefully come up with some kind of a solution so that we can simplify this and become a little more efficient on the bus route stuff. I hope all of you received the letter that Carla wrote. Carla emailed here about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. Hopefully that brought you guys some light to that tunnel and you're able to digest that a little bit. Our girls were also asked to do a little project in school, the 5th graders, and what they would write about some changes or concerns or good, bad, or the other indifferently. So they both wrote letters, and we did not ask them to do this. And they both wrote about the same thing, actually. If you don't mind, I'll read them to you. This one is coming from Aubrey. My name is Aubrey Ostendorf. I would like to change my bus route and make it shorter because I get sick and anxious from the longer bus ride because of how long it is. My parents have been trying to change to a shorter bus route since the 3rd grade, and we still get home late. It is affecting my grades because I get headaches from riding the bus so long. When I have a headache and have to do homework, I feel sick. That's why my grades are being affected. It hasn't always been a long bus ride, but now it's about 30 minutes longer than it used to be, even though the same bus I used to ride still goes by our house. Please help me. That's Aubrey. Sydney, hello, my name is Sydney. Can you please make my bus ride shorter because it gives me stomach aches, headaches, and anxiety. When I have homework, I don't feel like doing it because of how the longer bus ride makes me feel. It's hard to do AR read and homework on the bus when I have a headache. The longer bus ride makes my tummy feel bad and I don't want to eat supper sometimes. I don't have time to go to the bathroom at the end of the day because I am busy doing homework and I have to go really bad when I'm on the bus. I still have over an hour left of the bus ride and I'm worried that I might not make it home. Most of the kids don't have to worry about these things because they have a shorter bus ride. I wish my bus ride would go back to the way it used to be. I don't understand why my bus ride has to be 20 to 30 minutes longer than it used to be. So that being said, we would just like to be able to communicate with you guys and you communicate back with us to see if there's any solutions we can do differently there. You know, the other districts, neighboring districts that we've talked to, we understand they may go within a mile or 2 miles outside of their district if it's within, you know, another in-district student or something that they aren't going too far out of the range. You know, we're told that Paynesville is going up to 8 miles out. One of the neighboring districts, my hometown Melrose, they'll go up to the line. And if you want to open and roll, they'll bring you to that line. You wait at a field approach or a friend's driveway or something, and that's as far as they go. And then they have to, you know, give themselves rides back home and stuff like that. So.
There's the time.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Move on to consent agenda. So recommendation of superintendent to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Cheryl, did you want to review any bills prior to the approval?
Everything was pretty cut and dried. It was just normal business. Nothing jumped out at me this time.
Okay. Two personnel items that I would like to call out and bring to the board's attention. One is Cheryl Bungham has officially decided to retire. We are incredibly grateful for Cheryl's service to our school district, and we were fortunate to have her back for a couple of years, but she has decided it is time. So a special thank you to Cheryl as she begins her retirement and enjoys herself in that stage. The other resignation I would like to call your attention to is Principal David Orline has accepted a superintendent position. And so I never like to see anybody go, but to see somebody go and stretch and continue to grow in another leadership position, I think is exciting. So we wish David the best, and we will be facilitating an interview process that will include board members, community members, staff. So we wish David well, and I just wanted to call out those two personnel items for resignations in the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion we approve the consent agenda.
A second.
Motion made by Bruce, seconded by Thomas. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion was passed. Okay. Communication items.
Okay.
Administrative report.
Administratively, there's just a couple of things I'm going to call out. We have a check presentation tonight. So I just want to real quick draw your attention on the expenditures. So I'm going to just share my screen so anybody that's watching will be able to see kind of the areas that we're talking about. So just as a reminder, this is one of the first months that our audit numbers have been updated. So if you take a look back at the previous months, those were unaudited. So this month, the audited expenditures are represented in the expenditure report as well. In the revenue report, one thing I want to call out, and I'm going to pull this up as well, is that we do have one area that just really want to remind people why this is so different. If you take a look at our federal revenues, you're going to see that there's a marked difference from the projected year end of 23-24 and the audited numbers to our dollars that we've received. And that is because we are not receiving ESSER money any longer. So I think it's just important to remember that the federal money that we received is not coming into the district. And so we will see that difference in the change. So it's just important to remember why that's there, that there's no longer ESSER funds coming into the school district. Okay. Any questions on the expense or the expense report or the revenue report? Okay.
I like the reports.
It's a nice way to, yep.
You've always liked those, Bruce.
Okay. All right. And with that, I will invite up our FFA alumni. Has a presentation, a check for the board.
I'm Gerald Johnson, and I have two checks to present you. One is for the irrigator insurance,
Wonderful. Thank you.
and the other one is for electricity and the well permit for the school FFA plot.
Wonderful. And thank you so much for your work in bringing that irrigator to fruition. That's just super exciting. So
Yeah,
thank you
now
for
if they
that.
get it up.
I know. Be here before we know it.
I know.
So thank you so much. And then lastly, I just want to take a second we do have staff appreciation later on in the agenda, but I just want to take a second to appreciate school board members. Last meeting, work session, we had our board self-evaluation. And I've appreciated the opportunity to work with you and thank you for serving our community and our students on the school board. So it is School Board Appreciation Month. So just my thanks to you and a thanks from our community and our staff for your service to the school board.
Checks in the mail.
And make really good cookies. All right, committee organization reports. I'll just do a quick without Rick here for the organization from a negotiations perspective. I'll just do a brief update because all of our committees are negotiating right now, with the exception of administration and the support staff, but the other organized units are still in the process. Lots of meetings, lots of conversation back and forth. So Rick is the common theme to each of those committee organization meetings. Beyond that, any other committee reports? Okay. And we don't have any student representatives today. Our students are, one of them for sure is at basketball for the last regular season basketball game for the boys. So, and our girls won, so they're moving on as well. It's been a good week. All right.
No old business.
Yep.
New business.
All right. So I will turn the presentation over to Darren Sievers. And I'm going to give him control of the screen and he will walk through. Darren, welcome to the Paynesville area schools. We're happy to have you here to present our survey information.
Great. And thank you. I'm excited to be here. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
We sure can.
Great. Well, I am extra excited about presenting to Paynesville because I was born and raised in Minnesota. We are a Wisconsin-based company, but I was born and raised in Lake City, Minnesota. Then I've been working for a school district near Milwaukee, Wisconsin I worked there for 27 years. Most recently superintendent the last 9 years. And 2 years ago, I took a position with School Perceptions. We were a regular customer of School Perceptions, and then they offered me a position that allows me to to move home to Minnesota, back to be around my family where I was born and raised. So it's nice to be working with a Minnesota school and provide our findings tonight. So here's how our agenda, or the PowerPoint table of contents, is going to flow. A little background about our company, and then we'll talk about the survey respondents who took the survey. And then the most important part, we'll talk about the results and analysis, and then I'll take any and all questions from the board tonight. So one slide about our company. This company has been in existence for 22 years. We've done over 10,000 staff, parent, student, and community surveys. By far the fastest growing area of our survey business is staff surveys, because it's harder and harder to staff schools. And we're trying to connect with school districts to make sure how their employees are feeling about things, check in with parents, check in with students. But we also helped 1,000 now, 900. We need to update this graphic. We've helped over 1,000 districts with strategic planning and referendum planning and funding planning, like the survey we conducted for you. This survey had a deadline of February 19th, and you had 493 total respondents. That gives you a 17% response rate. So the natural question is, how does that compare to other districts? Because sometimes people think, is that good? Is it bad? That is exactly our company average. When we send out a community survey, our company average is 17%. Some districts will see 9%. And then I just had a very, very small district in North Dakota where they had 37%. So, but when we average all these districts together, 17% is our norm. And within 493 respondents, as I give you projections of support later on, keep in mind that there's a margin for error there with it being a sample size of 493, statistically of 4.5%. All right, so who took the survey? This was a distribution of ages. And quite honestly, this is very, very typical. It is oftentimes that 35 to 44-year-old group is the largest respondent group. Those are your parents who are most directly affected by these funding. And when we're asking facility questions, they'll respond the most. And very typically, the second most responding group is the 65 and older group. Those are your retirees, your senior citizens who are on a fixed income and are sensitive to any tax increase. And it's nice to see that they responded at a 25% rate of the survey takers too. I looked at your census data, and 65-year-olds and older are 21% of Paynesville. And so they're a little overrepresented, but we like that because we want to know how they feel, because they also are the most reliable voters. They'll go to the polls and be voting on the question that you put before them. As far as we asked survey takers, are you a resident or not? And you may say, well, how could they not be a resident? I thought you just mailed the survey to residents only. Well, we did mail the survey to all residents, but we also sent the survey to all parents and all staff members. And within that 10% that said they are not residents, those are likely staff members that work there but do not live in the district. And then you may have some, as the gentleman talked about earlier, you may have some non-resident parents of kids who choose to come to your schools because they think it's a better school system for their family, but they may not reside here. Know that going forward, any projections I give will be based solely on the 89% that said that they're residents and that can vote, to give you a very accurate projection. We also asked them which municipality they lived in. And Janelle and I went over the data earlier today and determined that this is a really nice, accurate representation of your population distribution. Very, very, very similar to the last time we did a survey with you. 38% City of Paynesville, 28% Township of Paynesville, and 8% Township of Union Grove, and so on. Ironically, the last time you did a survey, those numbers were identical, other than the City of Paynesville was 40%. So very similar to 2022. And then we also asked them, are you a parent? 51% said that they're parents. So your parents are watching these funding questions very closely because they want to have good programs and strong staff at school. And we also asked, are you an employee? and 15% of respondents were employees. Now, when we talk later on about the data, we will have to do some weighting and correcting of our findings because parents are 25% of Paynesville. So they're very, very much overrepresented by the right graphic. Employees are less than 1% of voters. So they are also overrepresented. So we'll account for that when I give you our summary of findings. All right. We also asked them, if you are a parent, what school did they attend? And no surprise, 60% were elementary because that would be your school with the most grade levels in it. 47% reported being a parent of a high schooler and 39% middle school, and so on. Now, the next slide is very important for your school board and for Janelle and the leaders in the district. We asked the question, how do you like to receive school and district information? So the critical part of a survey is gathering information, but right behind that is sharing out the findings. So this will tell you how to communicate to your public the survey findings and then the accompanying actions that will follow based upon the findings. So the blue bar represents parents. That, again, I said that's 25% of voters. The purple bar are your non-parents, non-staff. They don't have kids in school. They don't work there, but they are 3 out of 4 voters. 75% of your community does not work at the school and does not have kids in school, but they will need to support whatever you're proposing. So when we talk to the parents about how do they like to receive school information, they're telling us by far number 1 is email, but number 2 is the school district newsletter. And third would be phone notifications, followed by the Facebook. And then, but they also read the Paynesville Press at a very large number, 32%. Now, as we talk about that 3 out of 4 voters that don't work there and don't have kids in school, you can't email them. So how do they get their school news? Well, clearly their number 1 source of school news is the Paynesville Press. So your local newspaper is critical to the exchange of information between the school board, school leaders, and your community. Second is, for that group, is the school district newsletters. So in sharing this with Janelle earlier today, she clearly stated, you know what, well, then I'm going to have to be sure to send out a newsletter of these findings and what our next plans are. And we're excited to have the Paynesville Press share these findings too, so that people know the results of the survey as well, because we appreciate people taking the time to take the survey. Next up, these are screenshots of the survey we sent out on your behalf. This was a very much an educational survey regarding funding sources. We talked about bond referendums, operating referendum levies, and capital project technology levies, of which this survey, that was a core question in this survey at the start. And then we explained to them why we're surveying at this time. One of the reasons was to ask them to renew the levy at the current tax rate, not increase it, just maintain the current rate for the next 10 years, maintain the funding that's already in place so that we can maintain the programs and services that kids are used to, computers, tech staff, infrastructure, public address system, etc. So here are your findings when we asked the question, would you support renewing the capital project technology levy at the current rate for each of the next 10 years? Now, again, staff were asked this question, and this is based on resident staff. 88% said that they would support it, either probably yes or definitely yes. 7% undecided, 5% probably no, 0% definitely no. Now, while that's an important population for us to survey, because we really care about how staff are feeling, because these are their working conditions that will be affected. Again, they're less than 1% of voters, so they really don't move the needle on the vote, but we value them and want their input. Second group that we'll report on tonight, resident parents. Take the open enrollment parents out and just ask parents that can vote, how do you feel about the tech levy being renewed at the current rate? 69% gave it a yes, probably yes, or definitely yes. 15% undecided, 16% probably no or definitely no. Now, as you look at the undecideds, we do track all of our data across our 22 years of doing projects like this. Our company average for undecided is 13%. So that's fairly typical. So as we look at the next slide, now we're talking about the non-parents, non-staff, that 3 out of 4 voters that don't work at the school or don't have kids in school. 46% said they would support renewing the current rate of the tech levy. 29% said no, probably no, or definitely no. And then I'll point out that 25% were undecided. So what we do with this data is we do a weighting. As I told you, we need to correct the data in the survey based on the percentage of the population that can vote. So again, I told you the parents are 25% of Paynesville. Non-parents, non-staff are 75% of Paynesville. So in the next slide, we'll take their opinions and weight them and average them to give you a district projection. So if you take the 69% support of parents, multiply it times 0.25, the 25%, and then the 46% support amongst the non-parents, non-staff, we give a conservative projection of 51.75% support for the tech levy being renewed at the current level. 50% plus 1 vote is what it takes for this levy to pass. So that is the school perception's projection of support. So out of this, what I would tell the board is that by a slim margin, but you have to take into account the margin for error I talked about based on 493 surveys, it'll be very important for you to continue to get your message of need out to your community. And as I go back a slide, particularly for this 75% group, there's 25% there that are undecided. And right now, because they're undecided, we projected all of them to vote no. So what needs to happen at the board level is to continue your efforts to educate the community on how critical this tech levy is, and that it's a renewal. It's not a tax increase. It's just a maintaining of a tax rate. So, and to continue to get that message out there via the different methodologies that you find are the best ways to communicate with your public, which we talked about earlier. All right, so I'm going to pause there and see if there are any questions from the school board about the tech levy specifically. And then you did take the time with your survey to ask other planning questions for the future as well. Are there any questions about the tech levy, the data as presented?
I guess I'm really shocked and disappointed that only 17% responded, but you said that's normal. Between you and I and the family, I think that's pretty sad, but I guess it is what it is. We definitely got to educate more people.
Yeah, you raise a good point. And again, it varies so widely from community. What I would tell you is, Janelle and I did look back at your 2022 survey based on that time, and you were at 27% previously. What I think is going on here is I think when with the questions that were asked the last survey grabbed their attention and they felt more compelled to weigh in. I don't know if maybe people are just like, well, they're just asking us about the tech levy. It's not that much money. It's no tax increase. I think maybe some people just kind of set it aside and said, it'll be just fine. They're not asking for a tax. People really pay attention when it's a tax increase or you're talking about building buildings or adding on. And I know that you did some things a couple of years ago that were part of that. I would tell you that it's not an excuse, but it is an explanation. We find with our surveys, depending on what's at stake, readership and response rates can go down.
Is that 70% of surveys submitted or 70% mailed out, or is that 70% of the population?
17% of surveys mailed out. What we did is we mailed one to every home.
Yep.
And in the case that there's a husband and wife that maybe don't agree, all they had to do is call Janelle, and she had extra surveys and extra survey codes because they could take it online, or they could take it old school, just fill it out by paper, and they mailed it back to our office down in Wisconsin, and we'd enter it for them by hand.
Thank you.
You bet. And I'll take plenty of time for questions at the end too. Is there anything else though about the data?
So with the 17%, you're saying that 51.75% is plus or minus approximately 4%?
Yes, sir. And that's why I would say continued efforts to communicate and stress the importance of this, particularly leading up to the vote, will be critical because of the fact that you have, that particularly here, these undecideds are almost double what we would typically see as a company. So there's some people out there that just, like for whatever reason, they need to hear more before they make a decision. Again, we don't want to assume a specific number comes to the side of yes. So we want this to be successful. We want you to have the funding to maintain your tech programs and your services. So we err on the side of, well, we're assuming that they're going to say no, but our hope is that you can swing a percent of those undecideds to the yes side, because then you'll be in great shape.
If we back up some, was it 79% of these people wanted to receive their information by mail, or what was that?
So
Remember, that one right there, 72%.
Paper.
yeah,
Wanted
they get the newspaper. But you know what I'm very impressed by, because this is not the case anymore. We are a clickbait society. People want emails, they want texts, they want to go to the website. I'm very impressed by Paynesville that they, both parents and that non-parent, non-staff group, they read your school district newsletters. So Janelle and I talked very specifically about this morning, about how important a summary of findings and getting your message out about how important maintaining this current levy at its current rate, flat increase, will be to get that out to the community in a newsletter, because both groups really read the newsletter. And quite honestly, we do not see newspapers being this widely read. I do several of these presentations a week. That's my new job. And I would tell you, even in my school district, it was a district of about 3,500 kids, is a bedroom community of Milwaukee, kind of a rural farm town with strong FFA program and such. And our newspaper would not have gotten these ratings either. Your newspaper is the go-to for the non-parents, non-staff that we can't email. And
Go ahead, Ron.
I don't know what the numbers are. I mean, Mike Jacobson owning the press, but I know our household, we get it online, and I think there's a lot of people that renew the paper online.
yeah, sure.
That is really taken up a lot of steam, and a lot of people are running with it that way.
Sure.
And I love to see that, because I want these hometown newspapers to continue to thrive. It's where we can celebrate programs, we can celebrate kids, and just communicate. So, yes. Any other questions from the board? Okay, so now what I appreciated about this survey opportunity is Janelle wasn't just seeking feedback on funding. On your behalf as a board, we also asked, it was a good time to engage with the community and get feedback on how things are going with the district, feedback questions, and some future planning questions. So the first questions I have for you tonight are feedback questions. I'm going to remind you of the survey rating scale. This is very purposefully done by our research department. We asked them how they feel about the district, ... and then we insert the question. Our rating scale is on a scale of 1 to 5. We don't allow a 3. Human nature is, if you're not sure, or it doesn't really apply to you, if you give them a 3, they're going to mark a 3. And then they're kind of right in the middle. And then your scores won't really tell you much, because your results will be watered down. So we as a company researched it and said, you know what, if they're not sure, we're going to pull their answer out, because they don't have an opinion. We're going to only score those that agree or strongly agree, or those that disagree or strongly disagree. So your true median is a 3. We would love to see as many of these north of 3 as possible, approaching 4. And if it can be above 4, that would be great. So given that range, here are your results on communications. District has a website that's an effective place for me to learn about what's going on at school. Staff gave it very favorable ratings, but parents, non-staff, well above 3. And that's what we're looking for. Want to see as many things above 3 as much as possible. Social media accounts, even stronger ratings from staff and parents. Providing me with opportunities to offer feedback, and school board meetings are one of those means, far above 3. And then overall communicates with me effectively. So those are your communication scores. How about the culture at the school? Do we maintain a safe and secure campus? Very nice to see the feedback from your community, parents, and staff. And do we have the support of the community? North of 4 with the staff and approaching 4 by the parents, non-staff. How about leadership? Now, I will tell you, across the nation, we've been asking these questions. We have a presence in Arizona, New York City, Colorado. District administration, school boards have been getting lower scores, and it's a little bit the case in Paynesville. When we ask about leadership, administration doing what it takes to make our district successful, staff were the highest scores, parents, non-parents, non-staff slightly lower. But I'm very pleased to see, unlike some districts where I've really had a challenge to report these findings, all of your scores are well above 3. And I cannot say that about every district that we serve. Know that. School board doing what it takes to make our district successful. You see your scores. And overall, is the district heading in the right direction? Again, all well above 3. Now we ask them about academics and in development, preparing students for education after high school, apprenticeships, the tech ed improvements you made, college readiness, preparing students for careers, developing students' character, and having high expectations for students. Support for learning. Do we have partnerships with?
Here. Can you go back one?
Sure.
So being the non-parents and non-staff basically look like giving us a higher rating than the parents. So what's the reasoning, do you think, there?
Well, I would tell you that that would be a really good question for I would say Janelle, her leadership team to wrestle with. I would tell you non-parents, non-staff don't know as much because they're not in the schools working, and they're not in the school. They don't have kids coming home from school. I'm glad you're asking the question. The parents are having that firsthand experience, and for whatever reason, they're not as happy, or they're not seeing the school in the same way as the community members who are not there on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And quite honestly, if we're going to continue that conversation, I would want to have this conversation. And Janelle and I talked about this today. I just loved working with Janelle because she asked such good questions. I get some superintendents that just want this as frosting, and then they want to gloss over this. And Janelle wants to do a deep dive. We talked about this at length today about these expectations for students. This is a conversation I think that'll be important to have. And she talked about this, having this with their leadership team or principals, having this conversation with their staff about those student expectations. And I'm not here to sell stuff, but I would tell you down the line, we do have staff, student, and parent surveys that we can help you with and ask deeper, more probing questions to really try to diagnose. Tell us more. Is it support for learning? Is it breadth of offerings for learning? Is it not having enough advanced classes? I would not say it's tech ed because I know you've made changes there, but we can ask those questions. We have about a 35 question survey for all 3 of those populations to do a deeper dive to help you gather that. But I would say for free, at least start having those conversations with the key members of your staff at each level and see what their thoughts are. And then we can always come back to that and help you with that if you need more. Okay. Okay. Again, a support for learning. Love to see the scores for those partnerships with local business and community members. I know in Lake City, the Red Wing area, those partnerships where I grew up are continue to be important. And it's nice to see where people are seeing you is trying to develop those relationships locally. And kind of alluded to this at the beginning, it's never been harder to staff schools. So much has changed. From my elementary principal days where I'd have 695 applicants for a job. My last year as superintendent, that same grade level, we had 19 applicants for the very same position. So a lot changed from 04 to 2022 in our district. And I think that's not unique to Wisconsin. I think that's across the Midwest. And so we've got to have a high quality staff, and your parents and your community agree that that's important. So what we do with all those questions, we give you a summary of findings across all three groups. And so the top 5 items that your survey reported out is that it's that all 3 populations can agree on. Were in their top 5 were having a website for effective communication. That was in the top 5 for all 3 groups. Maintaining a safe and secure campus was important for all 3 groups. Community support and effective partnerships with local business. However, we also try to give you what I would say your homework, areas of improvement. We want to understand what they see as your strengths. We also want to understand where there's work to be done. And I would tell you the question that you just brought up, very astute of the board leaders here, that high expectations for students was the lowest scoring area and is something that should be looked at further. Administration, school board were in the lowest 5. Developing students' character was in the lowest 5. So some things to study there further, for sure. Within the survey, we also talk about the future. We want to ask them about what do you think we need to do to be future ready in Paynesville? And so we asked them to pick up to 4 areas that they felt were most important. You know, the money's not limitless. That's why we're asking the tech levy question. So if knowing that resources are finite, what are the top 4 areas? And here's what were the future ready areas that the survey takers rated as the top. In all 3 groups, parents, staff, non-parents, non-staff agree preparing students for life after high school is number 1. Now, number 2 for the non-parents, non-staff, that 3 out of 4 voter group was also career tech ed shop programming. Parents rated that very, very high too. Staff, not so much. But what I would tell you is I think the reason that was so low amongst the staff is they're inside the system and they know you've already prioritized this. So it's not future ready. You're doing it right now. You've already made those gains and added that programming in the last couple of years. So the staff are looking for you to do other things. Staff are more worried about things like reading literacy as you go further down the list, and college credit opportunities, and retaining high quality staff. But this kind of tells you how all 3 groups feel about things. And there's no doubt that you were ahead of the times. Many districts right now that I'm working with are trying to get their tech ed programs in shop programming up to speed for that skills gap, that trades skilled labor gap. You're already doing those things in Paynesville. As we go down the list, to a lesser extent, but certainly high on the list for staff, student discipline, behaviors, social, emotional well-being for students. This is one common theme across the nation. As I referenced, New York, Arizona, everyone in between, mental health amongst students is a worry, particularly post-COVID. The kids are struggling with their mental health. And then, again, I'll provide this whole list for you when we're done with this call. This is your PowerPoint to share if you want to take this back out to your community. And then to a lesser extent, you'll see things like bilingual education. They're not as worried about that. Athletics, you may be surprised to see how low that scored. I think the community feels, and a lot of communities feel, as though we've done enough for athletics. We've done a lot of surveys this fall where we've got tech ed on it and athletics. Tech ed's getting all kinds of financial support. Athletics, lesser extent. I think they feel like athletics has enough financial support. And COVID taught us the bottom scoring area. COVID taught us that there's nothing is going to replace the good learning that takes place having a teacher in a classroom in front of kids. That online and distance learning is never going to replace the good stuff that happens in a traditional classroom with kids interacting with each other, working in small group, etc. So then we also said, what do students need to be successful beyond the foundation of math, science, social studies, writing? What are the 4 skills that graduates need to have? Here are your results. Financial literacy, managing money, top amongst all 3 groups. And then once again, we're reminded, again, the skills are in the trades. And then down the list, civics, citizenship, time management, priority setting, managing stress, and mental health. Again, to kind of reinforce the other graphic. So some very, very interesting findings for maybe future course offerings, staff development. No doubt that all 3 groups agree that we need to make kids more aware of how to manage money and plan for their financial future. And then other areas that scored fairly high among staff and parents, communication skills, communicating effectively in large groups. And then to a lesser extent, resolving conflict and further down the list, leadership, service learning, etc. So this kind of gives you as a board, but particularly your school leaders, some planning priorities for future courses, curricular needs, etc. And as I wrap up your report tonight, we asked some questions in the survey that we also asked back in 2022. Every survey we do as a company, we ask these questions. Now, you've already asked a lot of good probing questions about the district, about planning for the future. We have 4 core areas that every survey we give where we're asking for a new elementary school or a remodel of a high school or whatever it is. We ask them to rate the school district on a scale of 1 to 4, poor to great, how they feel the district is doing in each of these 4 areas. So the true median here is a 2.5. So delivering a high quality education, 2.89 for the staff, and you see across the parents, non-parents, non-staff. Communication, keeping the public informed on a scale of 1 to 4, all above the median of 2.5. When it comes to managing funds, and this is consistent with every district that I work with, managing funds drop below the median 2.5 for parents, non-parents, non-staff. But then building pride in the community jumped up, highest scoring area across all 3 groups. So there is pride in the community in Paynesville. Now, what we do for you to give you some perspective, these are just raw numbers. We ask this question enough that we have a deep comparison pool that can give you a percentile rank of how these scores compared to other districts. So what we do is we combine all 3 groups. The first column shows you percent good or great, giving you a 3 or 4 on all 4 questions across all 3 groups blended together into a summary report. The second column is your average score, combining the responses for all 3 groups. And then that third column is your percentile rank. So for example, delivering a high quality education, unfortunately, that has you at the 5th percentile, meaning other districts scored, 95% of other districts scored higher than you. Communication, 17th percentile. Managing funds appropriately, the 8th percentile. And the building pride in the community is at the 30th percentile. Again, 70% of other districts would have scored better than you, but it's by far your strongest area. Out of curiosity, as Janelle and I were analyzing the data together today, she asked if I could present to you how this data looked the last time we asked the question. So I'm going to show you the results from 2022.
Don't rush.
So In 2022, delivering a high quality education was at the 20th percentile. Keeping the public informed, the 8th. Managing funds, the 2nd. Building pride in the community, the 3rd. So some things have changed. The other areas actually went up, but delivering a high quality education went down. So to the board member that asked that question earlier in the survey about what's going on there with how people responded on that high expectations for kids, definitely that is a community-wide opinion that there's something going on with high expectations for kids, delivering a high quality education, because that, again, from 2022 at the 20th percentile and 2.92, it dropped to 2.69 into the 5th percentile in 2024. And then the final question on the survey, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely would you be to recommend the district to a friend or family member? This is what we call our net promoter score, and it's very much linked to referendum support. We've done studies, and it's kind of human nature. Bottom line is, if they're feeling good about the district, they're more inclined to renew a levy like the one you're putting in front of them, or to let their taxes go up with a bond referendum or a operational levy. So your score in 2022, 6.51. 2024, it's up to 6.69. So the district is seen more favorably. And if you look at it, what I like to see, 16% of your people are neutral, so they don't really have an opinion either way. As I told you earlier, if you allow people to go right in the middle, they will. But I really like to see how top-heavy Paynesville is. 16% giving you a 10, another 11%, so 27%, a 9 or a 10, but then another 19%, 8, 9, or a 10. So things are moving the right direction overall compared to 2 years ago. I just think further study would be worth the time to talk about the education and the expectations of kids based on some. That's one of the key takeaways of this survey as far as I'm concerned. So that's the end of a very, very long report, but with lots of important data. What questions does the board have of me now, having seen all of that in totality?
So my question is, if I go to the very first part where we talked about the non-parents and everybody, and our support there, then if I go to the second section, well, let's go back to the first part. Then I look at the support of the teachers and I look at the support of the parents. But then I go to your second division where in many cases, the support of the parents were in the middle, the public, the non, were high, there you go, closer in many cases to where the teachers were a little bit higher.
Yeah.
And then we get to the tail end where our financial management has gone from one number and it's changed. It kind of just relates it back to potentially that group of people not understanding where we're spending the money, is my interpretation.
And I think that is really, really astute. Wow, I'm really enjoying this time with your board. I would tell you that that's a very insightful take. I don't think that if they really knew how tight your budgets are and they really understood how much you critique and scrutinize every dollar you spend, that people would feel that way. I just think there might be not enough information. And again, please don't misunderstand. I think a district, I know this firsthand, having been a superintendent in a district for 9 years and in trying to communicate about our referendum. And then as soon as we passed that and built our buildings, we shut down because of COVID. Communication, we can never do enough communicating. But one area where I think schools struggle, it's such a complicated formula in Minnesota and Wisconsin with so many restrictions. And then, as Janelle astutely pointed out early in the presentation, and then everyone thinks that you're just swimming in money because of the federal money you received from the COVID, well, that's gone. And so times are very, very tough again because many states stopped giving money to their schools during the pandemic because they're getting federal money, and some of it hasn't been reinstated at the rate that it should have been post-COVID. And so there's just some misunderstanding out there about how money is being spent, the restrictions that are being spent on it. I mean, don't get me started with special education and the fact that back when special education started, the federal government promised 2/3 funding, 66% of special education costs being reimbursed, and now it's a fraction of that. And yet we need to do everything we can to support kids with special needs. There's just funding, it's misunderstood, and it can never be communicated enough. Great point.
I guess I'm at a loss for, and I realize, you put this thing together, but I guess that, it's our problem to reach an expectation for students. But unfortunately, this day and age, and it trickles to the workforce, how do you do that? I don't know. How do you raise somebody's expectations or create that environment? I think
it's a gradual process. I think I don't think it's anything that you can do. I would tell you that it's not like you can necessarily just overnight, over a summer, bring the teachers in and we're just going to, just knock them over the head and just change the whole expectation. But I think it's a gradual raising expectations from the bottom up, particularly I think it's a K-12 work together on where do we think. I think we've got to we have conversations with building leaders and have conversations with staff about what do we make of this and what are we seeing. And I think we have to listen to our teachers to see what they're asking, what they're asking of the kids in the classroom, and are they asking enough? And why would people see them as not maybe asking enough, not having a high enough expectations? And we then we need to sit back and do a lot of listening and find out why that is. Can they not expect a lot because no one's following through at home in reinforcing those expectations? There's always more than one answer. So I think it's a conversation that's got to be had.
Yeah, you've made a true statement there. A lot of that starts at home.
Right. And quite honestly, I think what we've seen, and again, we've seen with a lot of the districts I work with where we're doing those student, staff, and parent surveys, districts have surveyed, developed a baseline of all their findings, and then they try a couple things. You can't chase improvement 10 to 12 ideas at a time. It's 2 or 3. And what I think one of yours would be maybe look at some academic things. And if you need us down the line to help measure some of those, we can. But I'm not salesy. I'm just trying to talk about other things we've done in other projects. When I hang up here, I'm presenting to a district where they felt like the expectations weren't high enough for kids, and they didn't have enough social emotional support for their kids. Well, they put in some devoted programs, trying to have some more advanced classes to push the upper kids, and more tech ed programs to keep the kids where they're at, where they can extend themselves within an area of interest and get excited about. Now, you've done those things, and a year later, they ask the same questions, and they're seeing some really nice growth. The kids are recognizing, the parents are recognizing. And so I think you've got a brilliant leader there in Janelle. I think she can facilitate those conversations with their building leaders and then down to the staff. And they're in the trenches with the kids every day. I bet you they'll have some very, very good insights into why this data is what it is. This is your PowerPoint point. And honestly, I can present these findings if it helps you as a district to present these findings on behalf of the company as a very neutral third party. But I would also tell you, I will be emailing this to Janelle, and she can just show some of these key slides to your staff and say, help me make sense of this. You're with the kids every day. You're in the schools every day. What do you think?
I think there's a really nice platform to engage in conversation. I think there's, I think there's also a really good opportunity to pull parents together and kind of learn more about, so here's what we're hearing, help us understand, what does this look like? What do high expectations look like and sound like in the elementary and in the secondary. And I think it's a good opportunity for a conversation. And I think that's one of the things I'm really excited about with this data is now we have a good platform to have some ongoing conversation.
And you bring up a good point, Janelle. It really need to figure out where it's at, and not that as a whole, we as a school district need to work. We have to attack this, but is it more so from the elementary side, or is it more so from the secondary side? That kind of lead us to going someplace. So they bring a good point.
I think we sometimes as districts forget that some of those kids that are now, I think it would be the third graders, second, third, fourth graders, that shutdown of schools really costs us some critical baseline skills and some critical learning in those formative years. Those kids that should have been in 4K, 5K first grade, nothing more important than that baseline that those kids receive from their teachers there. And they got stripped to that based on some of the shutdowns we were all told we needed to make. And again, it's easy to look back and say things you would have done differently, but it is what it is. And now achievement's suffering as a result of that, and expectations are suffering.
Yeah, and I wonder if some of that, looking at that data as Janelle that puts her team together and starts working on it, is it going to come out? And I kind of hate saying this because I try to stay away from it, but is it really somewhat of more of a fallout from the pandemic, right? As far as the shutdown, even though we have data starting in 2022 that you had presented us, I still think that maybe that was just too new at that time, because really that was the first full year that there was back in school as far as students attended school when I say in residence, or at least in the schoolhouse, versus even 2021, it was a mixed bag.
Yep.
So,
And Gerald, you make a great point, because quite honestly, that other survey did not ask these deep probing planning questions. We only asked those 4 basic that we ask on every capital referendum survey, just because we don't want to just be asking for money. It's a good time to ask for some feedback. Janelle endorsed a real deep dive into planning questions. There's a lot of data here, a lot of good topics, and lots of good feedback on things you have in place and future priorities that reinforce what you've already done.
but so I'm sure, as you say, you and Janelle had a lot of conversation, and so I'm sure this probably came up, but for the public that may be watching this or will hear this, Janelle is really taking on strategic planning and making sure that our strategic plan is a live document, or at least something live to move forward. And I think a lot of these questions, the way they were laid out, was really to attack that, or at least keep that going as far as the strategic planning. So,
yeah, my 2 years with the company, you're the smallest district that has asked these questions. A lot of times, we just did this in a De Pere, Wisconsin. Well, it's 6,000 kids, because it's such a big monster. Without some of this guidance data, they don't know what to do. Sometimes little districts think they know because it's so intimate that they can just plan. But the reach out to your community, regardless of size, is critical, because now you've got good community feedback on what to do for the future. Financial literacy. That was a surprise for both of us to see that score that high. But no doubt, the value of money. There's so many things being asked of the curricular minutes in a 7-hour learning day for those kids, to set some priorities. Financial, I think we assume that families are sitting down and explaining finances with their kids. I think a lot of families are, but it's gotten sophisticated now. It's debit cards, credit cards, all college, there's a lot of money flowing back and forth out in society. And I think that was a neat thing to see, that they're thirsting for that knowledge.
yep. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? So what we'll do is Darren will send over the presentation. I will put this on the work session the beginning of March. And so we'll have an opportunity to just kind of, now that you've had a little bit of time to think about it, kind of dig into it, we can chew it over a little bit more from there and go for next steps. So
Can you get a copy of this out to us?
yes, absolutely. Yep. As soon as I get it, I'll pass it along and share it out. So,
Okay.
all right.
Well,
Thank you.
Darren, thank you so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time.
Before I go, can you tell me, all my Packer fans are harassing me. Is Kirk Cousins going to resign? I mean, what's the plan here? Anyway, all right, good. Hey, thanks everybody for your time, and it's been a pleasure. We'll be in touch in the future. Take care.
All right.
Yep, bye-bye.
All right. And then just so that you're aware, in March, we'll also have a conversation about then what that next step would be from a timing perspective. So it would be, I guess, well, and I should just maybe ask if the board felt strongly that in light of this information, we should go out sooner rather than later. We would need to hold a special board meeting to facilitate a resolution calling for an election. Based on my preliminary conversation with him and then hearing today, I feel like we have a task of education in front of us. So
Yes.
I think, okay, then we'll just revisit this in March and then dig in a little bit deeper. Okay.
All right, moving on, 2024-2025 calendar.
All right. So I'm going to, I'm going to cast the calendar. We had so much conversation around the calendar. So it was just to be completely honest, it was a struggle. It was a concerted struggle to try to meet all of the requests and considerations. So most importantly, I think the first question that everybody's probably going to ask is, are we done before Memorial Day? We really could not be done before Memorial Day for two reasons. In order to be done on the Friday, May 23rd, there would have been 0 days off around Easter, and we would have had students in session on December 23rd, which is that Monday of December. Lots of conversation took place around student learning. Lots of conversation took place around just how we get our, what's good for our kids, what's good for staff, and all those considerations. We opted as a committee to recommend having the Friday and Monday off around Easter, which is then that 21st ends up being a day that we have to add to the end of the year. And it really did not make any sense in our minds to come back for one day after Memorial Day. So then that also brought back then let's not have school in session on December 23rd. There's a lot of effort taken into having consistent quarter days. So on the school calendars that are posted to the website, you don't see this information on the right-hand side, but like the quarter days, the quarter number of days per quarter, you'll also notice that fourth quarter has 44 days. That was important because the spring season for elementary is when the field trips and track and field days take place. And that is also when our spring activities are traveling and having weather contention oftentimes. So that was another area that was taken into consideration. We also took a look at the 2-hour late starts. A lot of conversation took place around, could we have those at the end of the school day? And what we found was that between activities and having, if we had 2-hour late starts for our students that were non-drivers, so they take buses home, how do they get back for activities? There were a lot of prohibitions to having those late starts in the afternoon. We also took a look at preschool students making sure that they had opportunity to attend on Mondays and Tuesdays. We considered trying to have every 2-hour late start on a Monday so that it was just consistent for families. But there too, again, we recognized that there was a number of factors for our whole preschool classes. Our committee, they came back together. I think it was 4. We had 4 different meetings, Cheryl?
At least 4. There might have been 5.
And lots of communication back and forth. So we fully recognize, we asked, do you want to be out before Memorial Day? We tried as hard as we could, but it did not make sense from student learning beginning to end to just push it in with as early as Memorial Day is. We also will struggle with the same concept for next year because it's only next year, I believe it's the 25th. So it's hard to get the required number of staff days and student days in the calendar and try to have some honest breaks for families. We also heard the feedback that our holiday break over in December was really short this year. So that also would have been another disruption to that break period. So with that, I'll just entertain any questions, and Cheryl was part of that committee as well.
I have to say the teachers and everybody on this committee was so concerned about how it worked out for the students. You know, having an extra day here, but that really didn't do anything because it didn't work into the end of the quarter, or having an extra day there, or eliminating a day here, but to keep the student days, the contact days, the number that we really need to have, that we didn't want to reduce, even though we can a certain amount. This board has definitely said they don't want to reduce student contact days, and I don't. These teachers really went head to head with every problem, and really, it was a lot of discussion. This wasn't taken lightly.
Any other questions or comments about the calendar?
You're looking for a motion, right?
Yes.
I make a motion to accept the calendar.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then our last informational item is it is appreciation. And the week of February 9th, 5th through 9th is actually Food Service Appreciation Week. We have like a superhero food day coming up in I think that's in May as well. But this is the formal recognition at the board level for our food service employees. So if you see them out and about, please say thank you. I think it's really fun to see our students walk through the line, and how many of our staff, I mean, they just know all the kids, and the kids smile and they smile. And so grateful for for the food service staff. Also on February 21st was Bus Driver Appreciation Day. You'll see the identified list of all of our bus drivers and staff at Paynesville Motor and Transfer. Bus drivers have a really critical role, and they are the first face that a student sees when they get on the bus in the morning. And so that smile goes a long way. So I can tell you, I remember my bus drivers, Alden and Sam. They caught me running down the hill many mornings when I was late, and they welcomed me every time. So bus drivers and our bus company are greatly appreciated. So thank you to our Paynesville Motor and Transfer bus drivers as well. And of course, school board members, as I talked about a little bit earlier today. So that's just the informational appreciation.
And review upcoming meetings. Special note, next month's work session is on a Monday versus a Tuesday. And then I think you said the teacher negotiations was moved.
We needed to move the Thursday, February 29th. Teacher negotiations went to Monday, March 4th. So that they could attend the girls basketball game. So
I noticed there's nothing there for the custodial. I know that got canceled.
mm-hmm.
There's just nothing set up yet, right?
I checked your email. There's a couple that came through just today. I'm trying to find another date, because yes, we've been looking for a date on that one, but it is, we had to cancel. It was supposed to be tomorrow.
Yep.
And I have just sent in the last couple of hours. So in the works, working on it.
Yes, I know policy committee meets in March also.
That was just scheduled as well. Yep. I want to say that's also March 19th.
Yep, it is.
Okay. We'll add that on as well. Okay. I think that was added after the agenda was sent.
It was,
too.
yep.
Okay. All right.
Looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you much.
Good job, Rachel. It's thrown in the spot.
Thanks for the.
You're hired, Rachel.